Hey everyone, I just want to thank you for joining us today. This is a conversation about breast cancer, not something we talk about every day, but I just feel led to talk about it more often. And especially it's October of 2022 as we're having this conversation. And I think the more we talk, those of us who have been through it, the more we talk about it, the more awareness will bring to those who may encounter it at some point. And I don't even know the statistics, but I know that every year more and more women are approaching, I mean, whether it's just going in for a mammogram and the fear of, I mean, the world has made that to be some horrible thing that with modern technology it really isn't what it used to be. I remember back the first time I went in for one, the memes, or laying on the garage floor of the car, driving over your breast. And it's just not like that anymore. So if we can help take away some of the fears that some people may have, more power, that's great. But then also that in between period where
Mhm.
we're waiting for test results and we're waiting to hear what's it going to look like, what's the diagnosis, what's the treatment going to be. It's all scary because we don't know, we've never been down that path before. And
Mhm.
then we can dig into other topics along the way. But I just want to welcome those of you that aren't with us live, that are watching the replay, and just let you know that we are so grateful that you are here and that you are allowing us to share our story. The gift of faith is what this is called. It's just a conversation about how our faith gets us through breast cancer, and it can, and miraculously it'll get us through anything in life. So first of all, I want to have my two beautiful guests introduce themselves rather than me taking that away from them. So, Shannon, would you please start and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm Vona's cousin, so related on both sides of the family. That really confuses people, but
But it's so much fun to talk about our double cousins.
it is. It is. Um, I'm a mom of four, two boys that are mine. I have two stepdaughters. Was raised by a mom who had a huge faith. And I'm going to tell you that through this whole journey, and as we continue to talk, my mom was probably one of those whispering in my ear.
Mm.
And so, um, yeah, so I was 48 with my diagnosis. So just a brief thing about mine is it was caught early. So, like Vonna said, go in, get your yearly mammograms. And I guess the one thing that I want to say is I was very hesitant at first about sharing my story, just for the fact I didn't want people to think I was doing this for attention or is something out there that people could say, oh, I'm so sorry. I went to lunch with a really, really good friend, and she said to me, well, actually, we had lunch, we talked about everything. And as we were pulling out of the parking lot, she calls me back and she says, I meant to tell you, you need to share your story. I know you're hesitant about it, but she says there's two things. I believe in the power of prayer. The more people who know, the more who can pray for you. And the second is if your story could save just one person that reminds people go in and get your mammogram, I think you need to share it. And so that was where I started from.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful reminder. And that's a huge reason why we're here today. None of us
Absolutely.
want to bring glory to ourselves, but we've got to get the word out there. And Stella, you're actually Shannon and I, my diagnosis was, I think, almost exactly 3 months before yours. My surgery was for sure. And with the age difference and with your mom being gone, truly, I feel like it was a gift for me to be able to have walked that journey ahead of you and to be somebody that you could call with any kind of question. And I think we all need that person in our lives, whether it's breast cancer or something else. We need someone that we can just call and say, hey, let's just chat, if nothing else. We don't even have to really have advice, right? Just help me think through this. So um, and I'll get into it a little bit more, but Stella's story is a little bit different than Shannon and mine in that ours was both caught very, very early.
Mhm.
Mine was stage 0. I believe yours was too, Shannon.
Yes, it was.
Um, and
Stage 2.
due to modern mammography, that was really a gift. Stella, yours wasn't so caught quite so early in the process. So
Yeah.
your story really influenced me, and we'll get into that later. But for now, just tell everyone who you are and a little bit about your story.
Oh, well, I've met Vona through Health Coaching Institute, with program that we did together. Just been in contact with this beautiful woman ever since. And actually, we just met last week, and you were telling me more about this podcast, and or I'm sorry,
Yep.
the Zoom meeting, but and yeah, it was just something. I'm I build more and more confidence to be able to share my story more. I was diagnosed in November of 2017, and I was stage 2B at that time. And but as you said, we'll get into that later. But I am a mother of a daughter, a beautiful 11-year-old now, and my husband and I and our dogs and pets. We live here in Wisconsin. Um, yeah, I just have to say from the beginning that God put me through a roller coaster and taught me a lot, and it just bloomed. I feel like it's been blooming me. So.
Without a doubt.
Mm.
Yes, when we met in 2016, we were both beginning health coaches, and I think that's kind of part of your story, Stella. There's a little bit of pressure having, we believe in holistic health, and food is medicine, and we can cure everything if we just eat the right foods, and that's kind of a path you went down. Am I right?
Yes, it was. Yeah. And that started from just watching The Truth About Cancer, and I just remember that I watched it like maybe a few months before I got diagnosed, and I remember thinking, oh, well, maybe this could be useful for some other person, because I was like, oh, breast cancer doesn't even run in my family, and I was like, there's no way I'm gonna get this.
Mhm.
And I don't know, or should we share stories now, or
Sure. Yeah, I think yes, please.
yeah. So I remember um I felt a lump, and I was like, okay, this is weird. So I went to see my doctor, and he was like, well, he's like, you're menstruating right now, and you get lumps in your breast. He's like, so you should be fine. He's like, but if you're concerned, well, you can go ahead and get a CT scan, or no, I'm sorry, it was an MRI. And I was like, okay, yeah, I want to do one. And went in, and I just remember the lady she started just going, the nurse started going like here and there, like going all over the place. And I'm just watching her, and I'm like, I knew it wasn't something not good, but I also had this peace upon me and calmness upon me that I was just like, okay, this is happening. And I'll never forget. There was definitely, when I look back, for sure, it was the Lord's presence there with me that was just calming me down. And I just was like, okay, here we go. And then about 2 days later, the doctor calls me and says, yes, it's breast cancer, and stage 2B at that time. And I was, of course, saddened and cried. But then I just remember talking and praying to the Lord, and he's just like, I got your back. Like, I just remember feeling that, and him telling me that too. I believe that he was like, I got your back. And then I looked at my husband, and I was like, I got this. I got this. And I went for 2.5 years doing naturopaths, juicing, oh gosh, detoxing, eating just vegan food, no meat, no dairy, no nothing. I also got my amalgam fillings out, and gosh, I feel like I've tried everything known. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's so many other stuff out there, but I did a lot of things that were naturally, and I felt amazing. I have to say that. So I believe God was letting me go down this path, because I even found I don't know if either of you've heard of Crispy Cancer, but he's a no, he's a
Oh, yes,
Christian.
Chris Beats. Yes. In fact, I got that book after you told me about it.
Yes, yes, and that's too. I was looking for people who are more faith-based going through this, and he's very strong in his faith. And I did his program, and like I said, I did. I felt amazing. But then in 2020, I lifted up something heavy, and I felt like a crack in my back, and it was painful. But I was like, okay, I'll get over this. It's just gonna last for a few days. No, I started seeing a chiropractor. I started doing dry needling. I even got an X-ray. They said, "Oh, it's nothing bad. It wasn't fractured or nothing like that." I was like, "Okay." And then I made it all the way until January of the following year because that when my back got like that was in September. So in January, I just felt like something was off. Like there's this change in the way I feel, and I felt like God was trying to tell me something, but I wasn't listening. I was just like, okay, keep doing this, keep going naturally. And eventually I found a naturopath doctor, and she helped me with through some things, but then she also said she's finally at one of our visits, she's like, I think you need to see an oncologist now. There's just it's time like that. And I was like, okay. And then from then on, it just went with, it felt like a flow. I was like, okay, saw the oncologist, and she said, um, we let's do some MRIs because that's weird that your back is like that. And she called me within a few hours later, and she's like, after the scan, and she's like, Estella, you need surgery right away. She's like, the tumor has collapsed your lumbar three vertebrae in your, or not vertebrae, but your bones in your lower back, and it's decaying it, and that's why it's pinching against nerves, and that's why I couldn't even walk at the time. Like, it was that bad. My right leg was just horribly in pain. And I went and got the surgery, and I just remember waking up from it, and my doctor was there in the room, and she was like, Estella, she's like, the cancer has gone to your brain. There was three or four lesions in there, tumors, I'm sorry. And then she's like, there's a tumor near the pancreas. There's some in the bones. I felt like the list was going on and on and on. And then she said it's in your lungs. And so, yes, she's like, you're at stage 4 now, and it's metastasized pretty bad. And I remember, again, she's telling me all this, and I'm just like at peace. Like, it was like this calmness. I'm like, okay. But I'll never forget, through this whole cancer journey, I always felt like telling people, like, yeah, oh, and I did, but I was like, you don't know what God has planned for me. I was just like, because it almost seems like everyone was like, oh, you're gonna die, it's gonna get worse, it's gonna do this and this and that. Like, everybody was like telling me, of course, stuff that could have happened, but I just was like, if it happens, I know I got God with me. And after that, I had to do radiation. I lost all my hair. That was a process to go through. And but I felt just calm. It was just like I said, going with the flow, like, okay, this is happening next. This is happening next. It's just more, And then, so now this year, I changed, or I had to change oncologist, because my oncologist, she became she just is doing skin cancer now. And so now I have this new one, and he is very honest with me, and I like that. I've told him that I like to do things naturally, and he's like, of course he didn't agree with me and gave me a hard time about it. And he said, Estella, he's like, okay. He actually called me that night to tell me, he's like, okay, I will let you, or I can be on board with you doing some natural things as long as you tell me what you're doing. He's like, but I want to help you through this. And so yeah, I did some natural things, and some things he didn't agree on, but he was right about a few things. And I was like, okay, I I need to trust you too, because that's one thing too. I always pray to God before my appointments, like, Lord, please speak through him so that I will know what to do, and as well as for me, like, make his words your words and my words your words, Lord, so that we can communicate. And just been confidence with that ever since. Um, Last year in December, I did start chemo, though I finally got to that point where I was like, okay, it's time. It's time. And it was hard for me to do that because of all the things that I've learned about chemo.
Right.
And I was just, okay, it was another point again. I was calm, and I was like, I always said, if it ever came time, I want to be calm through it, because I don't want to think of chemo as a negative
Right.
thing through while I'm taking it. And earlier this year, I started a new one because the first one didn't work so well, and it progressed pretty bad. And I failed to mention too, I had a really bad tumor, or the tumor was growing out of my left breast. So it was so much. That was probably the hardest part of my whole cancer, was the tumor in the breast that came out. And just always, it bled a lot. Always, I'm putting bandages and cleaning it. I don't know how many times a day I would do it, and it got to be a lot. So, so now, just, currently this new chemo is working. Thank praise the Lord. And it's mild symptoms. I do get fatigued, and I'm still taking it. I'm doing it every 3 weeks. And yeah, and I see my doctor every other month now, or I'm sorry, once a month now. It's going to once a month, and then it will eventually go to
But you're feeling well
I'm
for the most
feeling
part, other than the feet. And as far as we know, the cancer is either it's not progressing anymore. Is that right?
Yes, he doesn't feel any of the tumors. I still get my brain scanned every 4 months, and actually have it next week, Wednesday. And he's been saying ever since I've been doing those that the lesions have shrunk. So
She's
there's
a
no
walking
tumor.
miracle. Right, yeah.
Where it will be. So
Yeah.
most.
Yeah, no, it's really been, like I did a post yesterday, I think it was, and I talked about how, in the past, unless you know somebody that's walked this journey. I mean,
Mhm.
the good thing is that there is so much healing. I mean, the medical world has advanced so far, and so sometimes we have a tendency, it's like, oh, you have breast cancer, I'm sorry, and then move
Mhm.
on, right? And don't really think about it anymore, because you kind of know in the back of your mind that it'll be okay,
Yeah.
until you can't just do that anymore. All of a sudden it's you, or it's someone that very close, and you understand the
Mhm.
devastation that it has on your life, and the time that it takes, and the financial, and I mean the appointments, and it's all of those things. So regardless of whether, it's like Shannon in my story where we caught earlier, or Stella's where it was further advanced, I mean, it changes your life and
Mhm.
how you look at life, right?
Oh yes. I it
So go ahead.
The Lord taught me a lot, just to trust in him. And that was my biggest test. It
Yeah.
was always these testings of, like, are you trusting me? Are you
Right.
letting me handle it? And I'm the type where before I was just like always thinking, oh, I can handle this. I can do this.
I
And
got this. Yeah.
yeah. And he was also telling me to slow down too. I was just too much
Yeah.
overwhelmed with a whole bunch of things. And I'm a person who's like, let's go, let's do this. And there was times where he's like, no, I need you to calm down. That.
And our bodies need that to heal. It just can't heal when we're constantly on the go, which I think is a
Mhm.
great segue to talk about Shannon and her experience. So, I mean, we've touched on it, but your story is a little different than mine too. Honestly,
Right.
I'll just say here, I mean, for me, the difference was I went in and stage 0, it was in 2 different spots, and so they said we really need to do a mastectomy because radiation, you just aren't a good candidate. They won't be able to get both angles right, and we just don't feel comfortable being able to take care of it. And I liked the idea of just doing the mastectomy, and the chances were that I wouldn't have to do radiation or chemo if that, if it wasn't already in my lymph nodes and all of that, and it worked out that way for me. But like I said before, part of that decision was, having seen what Stella was going through. It was kind of like, and at that point you didn't even know that it had spread. It was
Yeah.
just all the changes that you had made in your life. And I
Mhm.
honestly, I know how to eat right, but I don't always do it.
Mhm.
And the decision was kind of like, if I knew that and I wasn't doing it and I got cancer anyway, yeah, there might be extra motivation once you've already got it. But I I didn't want to risk not being able to follow through for myself. And so it just made sense for me to just do the mastectomy, and I chose to do a double for a lot of vanity reasons, if you will. I think it's the right thing. I think everybody gets to make their own decision on what's right for them, and it was the right thing for me. But I just felt blessed that I had Stella to talk to on my journey.
Mhm.
And then Shannon comes just a few months behind me and starts this same conversation, and little different path, but very similar, but yet not, right?
Right. Yeah, you were a huge encourager to me, like somebody to sound things off of. Like you said earlier, sometimes it wasn't somebody having the answers for you, but sharing their story, knowing, I think I'm just going to say, and Vonna, I think we both talked about this before, is ours coming in at stage 0. It makes you feel kind of bad sharing your story. Like, wow, there's people who don't find it till stage 4 and they're in this, and this is really difficult. But I've told people along that way is that diagnosis of cancer, no matter what stage it's at, it affects you and how you feel and what you think. And so having people out there to talk to, listen to you, is so helpful. Vana and I have an aunt, Esther, who went through breast cancer. Hers was considered what the doctor called an angry cancer. So this was something that, as my diagnosis came at 48, she wasn't much over 50, was she, when she got
I
hers?
don't think so.
Right. So this is like in the back of my head thinking, okay, my mom died of pancreatic cancer. We've had a lot of different cancers in our family. I watched my mother-in-law go through it. And I was in the room with Dr. Dirksen as he talked to my mother-in-law. And he's a wonderful doctor here in Sioux Falls. So him talking to my mother-in-law, I would have thought from the get-go, I would have went with a lumpectomy, did the radiation, but I decided I'm going to dig into this and I want to investigate more. I want to talk to people. I want to hear more things. And so I really took 3 full weeks to decide my story. So just to back up a hair, is since the age of 40, I've been doing going in, getting a mammogram every year. For the last 5 years prior to this, I'd been called back in to get a recheck, and we'd always been watching the right side. Come back in, get rechecked on the right side. Oh, you're fine. It turns out it's okay. We're just watching it. So that last time, this was into 2020. So it was in November of 2020. They called me back in, and I'm thinking, not a big deal. This is typical. I get back in, and now we're looking at the other side. So when I get called back in, she's like, you need to stay in this room. Don't get dressed. And so after 3 more rechecks, I knew those words were coming. You need to come in for a biopsy. And I think, like Stella said, there was just a calmness there. I worked for hospice for 15 and a half years. I knew what cancer did to families and to individuals. I watched it for a long time. I sat in weekly meetings for every type of cancer out there. And so just came home, got the news on Christmas Eve, which I asked for. I said, if you get it before the holiday, call me. And I just remember sitting there kind of numb, but never upset or worried. But in visiting with other people, and Vona being one of them, I decided for my full-time career, I bring peace of mind to families. I help people plan ahead. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to make the choice that brings me the most peace of mind. I don't want to have to come back in 10 years and be looking at the other side. And I don't really want to do chemo and radiation if I don't have to. I really didn't want to take tamoxifen for 10 years.
Right.
So thankfully, I was blessed enough that when my lymph nodes came out, they were clear. We got everything on the first shot, but I had some complications afterwards and still deal with those almost daily or nightly, if I want to say, but it's not something that I can't handle. And I know God walks with me. But the interesting part of that is, and not to get on a COVID subject, but COVID had hit in 2020. It had changed our world no matter how you look at it. It just did. Then our mayor here in Sioux Falls started a walking challenge. And so as you guys talked about health, I thought, you know what, this is my wake up call. COVID has slowed things down. Life isn't as quite as busy as it was. I need to take better care of myself. So prior to that diagnosis, I'd been doing this challenge. And so when that happened, it was like, on my walks, I started finding beauty around me. And Vona was in Sioux Falls for one of her doctor's appointments one day, and she said to me, "How long are your walks taking that you take all these pictures?" And I kind of smiled and I said, "You know what? I just stop and I snap them really quick." And so her words to me still ring in my ears. You know, God's giving you those pictures, right? And so I'm still on that journey of figuring out where that's supposed to be, but I feel like my diagnosis and all those things that happened that led up to that is something that I'm to be using to help others. And I know God's going to show me exactly what that is.
Yeah. I had forgotten about that conversation.
I haven't.
And truly, if anybody's interested, Shannon, she posts all of her pictures and they are gorgeous. And yes, actually the ones most recently, and they weren't from your walks, but the ones that I really fell in love with were from the Roundup and the buffalo and oh my goodness, those are stunning. So yeah, I see a really beautiful book in your future.
I do. And I want it to be, and how I hashtag it is finding beauty along the way. And I feel like that's what God has given me that journey for, is no matter the situation we have in our life, we need to find beauty along the way. And so for me, I want that to come in pictures that I'm sharing on these walks of trying to be healthier for myself, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And you're reminding me that, it's kind of like I've talked about mine from kind of the factual side of it, but what God did for me in that diagnosis was help me realize I did first of all, and I'm guessing you guys did too. I did why me, Lord? Right. And it took about 2 seconds for him to come back and say, why not you?
Right.
And it was like, yeah, you're right. Why not me? I can do this. With you, I can do anything, right? But then I started, and this was in the period I called the in between, those between taking the biopsy and getting the results, and that waiting and not knowing and where your mind goes, right? And when I was in that period of in between, I had this crazy thought that it was like, oh my goodness, if this is cancer, I can stop the podcast and I can stop my coaching and I can put everything aside and I can finish my book that God had put on my heart, years before. And I had started it, but I just was too busy and I wasn't getting to it. And then I had this boom, aha moment. It was like, wait a minute. I don't have to have cancer to give myself permission to pause, permission to do what God's asking me to do. So, Stella, I mean, you guys have both talked about how God worked in your life to help you see the beauty and to rely on him more and develop that relationship. And that's really what he did for me too. It was kind of like Yeah, you can, contrary to what all of the professionals who say you can't stop your business, you can't stop a podcast, you can never start those things again because you'll lose your people. God's like,
Mhm.
you know what? I created the world. I can do anything. If you'll just follow me and live in my will, I can, don't worry about it. I got this. And so I
Mhm.
did. Of course I had the couple of months of recovery, which I didn't do much of anything but lay on the couch. Well, no, I moved to the bed once in a while and back and forth, but it was, I mean, we talk about this survivor's guilt and, feeling guilty because we had it so easy because we didn't have to take chemo and radiation, but it's major surgery and it's you're down and out for a long time. But once that came past, it was so freeing to be able to just put all of those other things that I love to do, but to just put them aside. And truly, what the decision for me was, if this is the real thing and this is the end, God's going to say, you will not survive this cancer. This is going to be what takes your life. What's going to make the difference? Is it going to be the podcast? Is it going to be the coaching? And to me, the answer was the book. You've got to get a different view written and get it out there for the world. And so I did. And what the blessing for me is, I had a lot of it written. A lot of it was already stuff in my podcast. And so I took and started compiling that. And then it was like he just filled in the gaps. And honestly, there are times when I go back and I read the words in that book and I marvel. It's like truly the Holy Spirit gave me those words because I didn't even remember writing them, much less thinking about some of that stuff. So I think that there's the world tells us that we have to control the situation. We we have to, do these things a certain way. And you guys have both hit on the fact that when we just take a step back from what the world tells us we need to do and follow that path of peace and know that if we listen, God will tell us the right path. When we do that, he'll fill in the gaps. And Stella, you and I had the conversation one day about, so if this is your last, this is the end,
Yeah.
you need to trust that God will take care of your husband and your daughter and that it'll all be okay. And that was a hard conversation to have. I know it was hard for me. I'm assuming it was harder for you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. No,
go
mhm.
ahead.
No, I was just thinking like I I like got to my point where I was like, okay, Lord, if it's time or if this is it, then I know that I did all that I could to just love my family and they'll be okay. And he's like, I got this, and the trust is completely there because I'm just like, God will take care of them. I just know it.
And isn't that a message for life? If
Hmm.
you translate the conversation to all of life, and we just say, Lord, this is all yours,
Hmm.
just trust him. He'll take care of all the details because, he never promised us eternity on earth and in this life. And we get, Shannon, you're in the perfect business for this. I mean, you know this better than anybody. We're all going to die. And
Yeah.
I truly, a good friend of mine who I believe will be listening to this really gave me a perspective when I was going through my diagnosis and before my surgery and everything. And she said to me, um, you know, I don't pray for healing because I know God's going to heal your body. I just don't know if it'll be now or if it'll be on the other side of eternity, but he will heal your body. And that was so powerful to me to know that you're right. It's not the healing that we want. It's that peace, that knowing that he's got our back and it's all going to be okay, regardless of what happens. Whether we, step outside our door today and, get struck by lightning or what, it's, I mean, we don't ever know. And that's part of the beauty of our lives is we don't get to know. We get to just keep taking the next step.
Hmm.
I think just to have those powerful influencers around us, my mom was one. She sat there and looked at his kids. I don't want you to mourn my death when I die. She knew she was dying. She was 70. She said, I want you to celebrate my life. She goes, God's either going to heal me and make an example to the family members who don't know his healing powers, or she says, I get to go home and meet Jesus and I'll be pain free there. She goes, either way, I win.
Mm.
And I'm like, that was me coming into this not knowing exactly what it looked like. Is those words of hers, just when I said earlier, she whispers in my ear, it was like her faith was so strong. She was never scared. And so I thought, whatever this looks like, God is going to help me through it, because I watched her go through it.
Right.
And it was pretty amazing. It was sad, but it was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I don't know. I think you knew that I got to go visit her a couple of days before. Dad and I both went and visited her a couple of days before, within the week anyway. And truly the conversation wasn't a sad conversation at all. It was beautiful. So, um, and that's a gift that it makes available to everybody, is just that peace in knowing that he's there with us all the time. And unfortunately, as the analogy I use often, we leave that gift of faith sitting in a pretty wrapped up bow on a shelf. We never really take it down, or we don't often, so many people leave it there, and we need to take it down and we need to open it up and live it, and just embrace everything that he has for us, and accept that this was part of our journey, right? It's good.
Right.
It's made us all stronger. It's made us all trust him more. And who would think, I mean, the world would tell you that this was, a bad thing that happened in our life. But God can turn it around for good, right?
Yeah. And I have to share that through mine, I of course was gaining my confidence and my trust in the Lord, but I've been noticing and just been seeing more and more that my family has grown in their strength more, and my daughters is praying more, and my husband, we're doing prayers at the table, and it's just like it's just been growing and blooming with them as well. My parents too. It's like ever since this diagnosis, just we've all been like stronger, even with each other, with being family, because me and my sister, my dad, and my mom, we were all a little bit like, oh, we'll see each other, special occasions and things like that. But it's brought us closer. So
I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
In fact, the conversation, I just had the conversation earlier today with a woman who is going to be in, so we'll use snippets of this in my podcast for this next week, but then the following 2 weeks, I have a conversation about courage with a woman who was converted from atheism to Christianity, and we have a beautiful conversation about how our actions and that peace that we have within us can influence others. We don't need, sometimes we're called to say words, and we're called to do things that are overtly inviting people in. But many times it's just the influence we have by our words and our action, or our actions that we take, and that just complete trust that is
Yeah.
what brings people in.
Yes, and I didn't really truly see it until just recently as much, I'm like, wow, I don't say anything or nothing to them, but I'm just like watching it and I'm like, whoa, I'm like, this is amazing. And I'm not just, it's just from me, it's probably something in them too that wanted, to
But he's
know more.
using you as an instrument to show them what it
Yeah.
can be like. That's so
Mhm.
beautiful. And see, that's, to me, that's part of the beauty of it too, is we don't always get to know where we're having an influence on people's lives.
Yes,
Just we
definitely.
just
Because people told me like, oh, you're being an influence, and I didn't see it. I didn't see it, and then little by little, I'm just seeing little things that I'm like, oh wow.
yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I don't really, it's one of those things, Stella, where I would say, for as long as I've known you, you wouldn't have been a person that I would have imagined standing up on stage and talking about how amazing, life can be and all of that. But as I've watched you go through this and the confidence that's been building in you, that could happen someday.
Oh, thank you, Vona.
Who knows? So I wanted to share one of the gals that had wanted to be here today, what wasn't able, shared with me a little bit of her story, and I just wanted to talk about it. Her name is Lisa, and she's actually one of my former classmates. And when I put the posts out about the event and everything, she was like, "Oh, I'd really like to be there, but I'm not able." And she's a 17-year survivor of breast cancer. And when she said she wanted to be here but couldn't, I was like, well, if you have any questions, let us know. Or if you have your own story, if you'd like to share it. And she just came back and said that, she said, I have no idea how I would have gotten through my battle without my faith. I didn't know how anyone gets through life's trial. I don't know how anyone gets through life trial without faith. I also found blessings with my cancer. A friend and I started a support group that grew from 4 people having coffee to about 50 members in a few short years. I have used my experience to help many others who are facing cancer and have made many friends in the journey. And I just love how, God does that. He just, and again, some people might look at us, the 3 of us, just sitting here having this conversation and making it available to other people and going, why did you even bother? Nobody showed up. Well, first of all, I don't know about you guys, but I've been just really blessed by this conversation. If nobody else ever watches it, it's been worth the investment for me. But I also know that there will be others that will watch it and will be blessed by it. So I'm really grateful to you guys for coming and sharing your story. Are there any last thoughts that either of you have? Or maybe before we go there, is there any advice that you would want to give to a listener to this that we haven't already talked about? Or maybe one that we've already talked about, that is get in and get your mammogram. And guys, you too can be impacted by breast cancer. So don't think you're immune. But you also have women in your life, and just don't ever put aside the importance of doing this. In fact, Shannon, you talked about it being during COVID. And it's funny how many people I talked to that were like, "Oh, I didn't know you had breast cancer." Well, of course not. Everybody, when you're sick during that period, everybody just assumed you had the other C, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so, it was a lot less visible than it might normally have been. But I started to talk about the fact that, so I was due for my mammogram like in April. Well, we were pretty, everybody was staying home, and, it's like you didn't go. So by about August, I think I finally had my regular, so I was 4 months late. And I made so light. I talked about how it was like, whatever. It's just something you check off the box, right? Well, they were running late the day. I always go in and, take like 15 minutes unless I got called back, which happened a lot before. But anyway, they were running behind, and I had another appointment in 45 minutes. So I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And so at about 1:45, they still hadn't called me in. So I just went up and said, I'm leaving. I've got something else I need to do. And it wasn't that important of a meeting, but to me it was like, whatever. So I left, and then they called and, got me in the next week and started the whole process. But yeah, I was just like, no big deal. Well, it is a big deal. Yes. Go get your screening.
Yeah. And I think that was one of the things I had people tell me. I put it off until you started sharing your story. I decided I needed to get in there.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. I would just like to, if anything, to say to people is that to be kind to yourself. I think that I don't know, with this comes like Havana said too, like why me? And you can go down like a hill of just feeling negative or just saying, oh, this is, I don't know, you can get into like this gloomy space. Um, I- and I just remember catching myself and being like, okay, no, let's do something positive. I would watch something funny or just feel myself around people who are positive or just, say some affirmations and things like that. I don't know, I just feel like a lot of people can just be like, oh, I got this, I'm just gonna lay around the house or things like that. And I have met people who've done that where they're just kind of gave up on hope or in themselves, and I just want to say, just being kind to yourself and giving yourself those moments for, to take time to, I don't know, take a bath, do something loving to yourself.
Great advice. Yeah, thank you. Shannon, did you have anything you wanted to share?
One thing, and I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's a little pink ribbon. And it is my mom's favorite verse that got me through this.
Mhm.
Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Oh,
Amen.
I have that one too, but not.
Amen.
Yeah, so that was very dear to me through that whole process. And that was my mom's favorite verse, and
Yeah,
it
I
helped
love
her
that.
too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's a powerful one. Yes.
Yeah. We have talked about all of the topics that I wanted to cover today, and I just really want to thank you guys for just sharing your story honestly and openly. And I just know that anybody who listens to this conversation will be blessed by it. And I want to thank the people who come back and listen to the replay, to feel free that if you know of somebody that could benefit from this conversation, please invite them in and share this with them, because it's important and it's a scary process. I mean, we can talk about it from the other side and know what it looks like, but when you're taking those first few steps down this path and you don't know, it's scary. Well, I mean, there's just no way around it. Um, but it's not impossible, and there are people out there that will give you support. There's all kinds of support groups, and truly just if you know somebody that's on the journey, be available just to have those conversations and let them talk about their fears and their hopes, and hold their hand, whatever. So anything else, guys?
No, but thank you.
Oh,
Thank you, Vona,
thank
for
you.
doing this up.
It was such a joy for me. So thank you all for joining us today, or whenever you do join us.